true crime case, the human meat noodle shop. Hong Kong, the 8th of July, 2006. It was a clear July morning. The remnants of the heavy rain from the previous night had significantly eased the usual sultry weather. In Charter Garden Park, quite a few people were strolling, breathing in the fresh air and enjoying the rare pleasantness of summer. Mr. Lamb, a middle-aged man with a few silver strands in his hair, leisurely walked his sleek, golden-furred corgi. The small animal, with its stubby legs and perpetually cheerful expression, was his joy in old age. The early morning atmosphere should have been truly peaceful, if not for the way the corgi suddenly stopped short, ears perked, and began to bark aggressively towards a dense thicket of weeds along the path. Mr. Lamb, initially a little annoyed by its disruption, gently tugged the leash, but the dog refused to budge, its eyes fixed on a hidden spot behind the leaves. A vague sense of unease began to creep into his heart. The corgi, naturally curious, began to creep closer, its small nose constantly sniffing the air. When it was only a few steps away, it suddenly recoiled, its barks changing from aggressive to fearful, mixed with wary growls. It was at this moment that a pungent, nauseating stench, the characteristic smell of decomposition, assaulted Mr. Lamb's nostrils, forcing him to cover his mouth. The smell of death. It was so thick and repulsive that his stomach began to churn. The dog barked incessantly, its eyes seeming to convey to its owner the presence of something horrific hidden within the black, bloated bundle submerged amidst the withered grass. The black plastic bag, the kind typically used for trash, now exuded an eerie and deadly mystery. Mr. Lamb felt his heartbeat faster, a sense of foreboding invading his mind. The dog's continuous warning barks, along with the increasingly distinct and horrific smell, dispelled all of Mr. Lamb's initial indifference. The courage of an experienced man urged him to investigate. Though an invisible fear enveloped him, he tried to remain calm. Looking around, he picked up a dry tree branch, long enough to avoid direct contact. Heart pounding in his chest, he cautiously approached the plastic bag. The corgi had now retreated further, but continued to bark, like a final warning. Mr. Lamb took a deep breath, trying to suppress the rising nausea. His hand, holding the branch, trembled slightly as he slowly prodded the opening of the bag. The plastic layer was thin and slippery. He had to try several times before he could pierce a small hole with the sharp end of the branch, and from there tear an opening. As soon as the bag was partially opened, a round, dark object, wrapped in matted hair, slowly emerged. The skin was pale, swollen, the eyes bulging as if about to fall out. A human head. In an advanced stage of decomposition, long, black hair, caked with dirt and bodily fluids, couldn't entirely hide the horrific disfigurement of the victim's face. The stench was now even more overpowering, assaulting Mr. Lamb's brain directly. The horrifying sight was like a sledgehammer blow to his mind. The middle-aged man stood frozen, his face drained of all color, his legs trembling uncontrollably. The branch fell from his hand. Overwhelming panic seized him. He stumbled back a few steps, his mouth agape, unable to utter a word. Only a few seconds later did he come to his senses. Tremblingly pulling his old mobile phone from his pocket, his fingers fumbling to dial 999, the wail of police sirens tore through the tense atmosphere spreading across the park. The scene was quickly cordoned off with distinctive police tape. The criminal investigation team, led by Superintendent Chen, a man with a stern face and sharp eyes, immediately began their work. The human head was carefully collected by forensic officers and placed in a specialized evidence bag. The smell of death still lingered, a reminder of a brutal murder that had just occurred. Detectives fanned out, searching every bush, every ancient tree, even overturning piles of dry leaves nearby in the faint hope of finding the victim's remaining body parts. But hours passed, and their efforts proved futile. Apart from the head, not a single bone, not another trace was discovered. The initial autopsy could only offer a preliminary conclusion. The victim was a young woman, probably under 30, and her death bore the hallmarks of a particularly heinous murder. The case was like an enigmatic fog, and the only clue was, horrifically, the most gruesome part of the entire picture. 2 days later, on the 10th of July, a few kilometers from Charter Garden, at a refuse transfer station hidden behind a bustling wet market, the air was thick with the smell of garbage and dampness. Mr. Liu, a sanitation worker in his 50s, his face weathered palavras aleatorias, won by sun and rain, was starting his afternoon shift. The roar of the garbage compactor truck, the swish of bamboo brooms, the familiar sounds of a life spent earning a living. As Mr. Liu pushed his garbage cart to a corner wall, where a few households often illegally dumped their trash, his eyes fell on several black plastic bags, identical to the type found in the park. They were stacked rather neatly, strangely tidy compared to the usual mess here. Perhaps someone had just moved house, Mr. Liu mused silently, paying little attention. He bent down, intending to grab them all and toss them into his cart quickly. As Mr. Liu strained to lift the bundle of plastic bags, one of them, perhaps pierced by a sharp object inside, or due to poor quality, suddenly tore open a large gash. The force of his pull caused everything inside to spill out onto the damp cement floor. It wasn't ordinary household waste. A viscous, dark red mass mixed with whitish, yellowish chunks tumbled out, emitting a smell even more horrific than the usual refuse. It was the smell of decomposing flesh, a putrid, overwhelming stench that made Mr. Liu grimace, step back, and feel a wave of nausea rise in his throat. He squinted, trying to get a better look at the mess before him. Under the weak light filtering from the market eaves, details gradually became clear, and they made his blood run cold. Amidst that slimy, foul-smelling mess of minced meat, there were unmistakable items. Mixed among the decaying flesh were several small bones, and, most horrifyingly, a few human fingers. Slender fingers with remnants of pale pink nail polish, now discolored and chipped. They lay there, severed, like silent, gruesome testaments to a barbaric crime. Mr. Liu stood frozen, a feeling of utter disgust and terror reaching its peak. The hand holding his garbage shovel trembled violently. The memory of the news report from 2 days prior, about the human head found in the park, suddenly flooded his mind. A terrible connection formed in his thoughts. Without a moment's hesitation, Mr. Liu fumbled for his old mobile phone, his voice trembling as he reported the discovery to the police. Superintendent Chen's investigation team was once again on the scene, this time at a filthy garbage dump. The area was quickly secured. Forensic experts carefully used forceps to pick through the jumbled mess. The stench was so overpowering that even the most seasoned investigators had to wrinkle their noses. After a preliminary sort, they confirmed the remains were minced human flesh and internal organs brutally dismembered. Amidst the slimy meat, 2 female fingers were found, an index and a middle finger, with remnants of light pink nail polish, matching the initial description of the victim whose head was found in the park. It seemed the killer had deliberately disposed of the victim's body in multiple parts, in different locations. The perpetrator's cruelty made the atmosphere at the scene even heavier. Another cordon, another meticulous search of every square centimeter. Investigators sifted through every garbage bag, peered into every dark corner of the transfer station, hoping to find anything that might reveal the victim's identity or the killer's whereabouts. But just like at the park, this second scene also appeared to have been deliberately cleared of evidence by the perpetrator. No identification papers, no personal belongings, no significant foreign fingerprints, only decomposing body parts and the terrifying silence of an increasingly baffling case. Superintendent Chen stood silently, watching his team work in vain, his face deeply etched with fatigue and a sense of helplessness. The victim remained an enigma, and the killer, like a ghost, was still at large, taunting the authorities. On the 12th of July, 2 days after the discovery of more body parts at the refuse station, life in areas not directly connected to the case continued as usual. Mr. Wang, a regular customer of Lee's Noodle House located on a bustling food street, dropped by as always to enjoy his favorite renowned beef noodles. He was a simple working man, and the hot, hearty bowl of beef noodles here was a well-deserved reward after long hours of hard work. Lee's Noodle House wasn't very large, simply decorated, but always packed with customers. The fragrant aroma of bone broth, tender rare beef, mixed with the scent of fresh herbs and spices, wafted out, inviting anyone passing by. Mr. Wang cheerfully greeted the husband and wife owners, a man in his 40s surnamed Lee who always seemed affable, and then chose an empty table near the window. Mr. Lee's beef noodle shop was indeed a highlight on the neighborhood's culinary map. From early morning until late at night, customers streamed in and out. The slurping of noodles, the lively chatter, the clinking of chopsticks and bowls created a characteristic bustling atmosphere. What made Lee's Noodle House famous was not just its rich, secret recipe broth, but also the owner's generosity. Every bowl was brimming with beef, thick, tender slices, thoroughly infused with spices, making customers remember it after just one taste. Many joked that there was more meat than noodles in a bowl here. Mr. Lee, a constant smile on his face, was always busy ladling broth, slicing meat, and endlessly thanking customers. The prosperity of the shop was evident to all, a testament to the owner's hard work and skill. Mr. Wang, after ordering a special bowl of beef noodles with extra meat as usual, didn't have to wait long. A steaming hot bowl, a cloud of fragrant vapor rising from it, was brought out. The rich aroma assailed his nostrils, making his hungry stomach rumble. Slices of glistening brown beef, interspersed with translucent tendons, covered the surface of the noodles. Sprinkled with some chopped green onions, fresh herbs, and a few slices of fresh chili, Mr. Wang picked up his chopsticks, took a large piece of meat, blew on it gently, and put it in his mouth. The sweetness of the meat, the richness of the broth, the spiciness of the chili all blended, spreading through his mouth. He ate with relish, devouring every strand of noodle, every piece of meat. For him, this was simple happiness amidst the hustle and bustle of life. While heartily enjoying his noodles, around the third or fourth bite of meat, Mr. Wang suddenly stopped due to a crack sound in his mouth. A hard, sharp sensation scraped against his teeth, causing a twinge of pain. Initially, he thought it might be a small piece of beef bone, which happened occasionally. He used his tongue to push the foreign object out of his mouth, intending to spit it into a napkin. The discomfort in his still lingered. He grimaced, slightly annoyed that his delicious meal was interrupted. But when the object lay in the palm of his hand, a cold sense of unease began to creep into his mind, because its shape and color were very unusual, unlike any bone fragment he had ever seen. Mr. Wang squinted, closely examining the object he had just spat out. It was small, flat, curved, with a slightly glossy and arched surface. One end seemed neatly trimmed, the other was jagged. Its color was an opaque white, with a faint pinkish hue at the base. Mr. Wang's heart began to beat faster. It wasn't bone, it was a fingernail. A complete human fingernail, with the pinkish flesh at the nail bed still visible. It was quite long, carefully manicured, clearly a woman's fingernail. A wave of disgust and horror churned in Mr. Freshened Wang's stomach. The fingernail lay there, in his wrinkled palm, like a silent, gruesome accusation. The half-eaten bowl of beef noodles suddenly seemed more terrifying than ever. Mr. Wang stared at the fingernail, then looked down at the bowl of beef noodles before him. The glistening brown slices of meat, the translucent tendons, now appeared indescribably ghastly. The enticing aroma from moments ago instantly transformed into a nauseating, haunting stench. He felt sick. The news reports about the dismemberment murder case from the past few days flashed through his mind. A horrific thought struck him. Cold sweat broke out on the back of his neck. Impossible. But the human fingernail lying plainly before his eyes was irrefutable proof. Mr. Wang trembled, trying to remain calm. After a few seconds of internal struggle, he knew what he had to do. He hurriedly stood up, without a word, walked straight out, still clutching the fingernail, and called the police. This time, his voice no longer trembled with fear, but with horror and determination. Not long after, the sound of sirens blared again, but this time not at a park or a garbage dump, but right in front of the bustling Lee's Noodle house. The sudden arrival of police cars caused the lively atmosphere in the restaurant to instantly dampen. Diners looked at each other in bewilderment, not understanding what was happening. Superintendent Chen, with a stern expression, led a team of investigators into the shop. All eyes turned towards them. Mr. Wang, still looking shocked, pointed out the table he had just been sitting at to the officers and recounted the incident. Superintendent Chen's gaze fell on the half-eaten bowl of beef noodles, then scanned the restaurant. Mr. Lee, the owner, emerged from the kitchen, looking somewhat surprised and flustered at the sight of the police. "Good day, officers. Is there a problem?" Lee tried to maintain a calm demeanor, but his voice already held a trace of unnaturalness. Superintendent Chen didn't answer immediately. His sharp eyes swept from Lee's face to the steamy kitchen behind him. "Mr. Lee, we need to inspect your kitchen and food storage area." Superintendent Chen's voice was firm, allowing no refusal. Lee looked momentarily stunned, then stammered, But why? "My shop is clean, hygienic, and fully licensed." Nevertheless, faced with the police's resolute demand, Lee dared not object. When investigators opened the door of the large industrial freezer in the storage room, a blast of frigid air rushed out, carrying a strange, pungent, indescribable odor. Inside, amidst carefully wrapped blocks of frozen beef, were other packages of meat, with very suspicious colors and textures. When one investigator used a knife to slit open a package, what was revealed made everyone present shudder. It was human flesh, cut into chunks, frozen solid. A large quantity of human flesh. The nightmare didn't end there. While some investigators were inventorying the horrific amount of human flesh in the freezer, others continued to search more thoroughly. In the bottom compartment of the freezer, hidden behind bags of ice cubes, they discovered two more strange objects, rolled up and tightly wrapped in multiple layers of black plastic. When the final layer of plastic was removed, the raw, barbaric truth emerged. They were two complete sheets of human skin. One appeared larger, possibly the skin from a back and chest. The other was smaller. They had been crudely processed, still with some fat and muscle attached, and were being morbidly preserved in the cold. The air in the storage room grew thick, filled only with heavy breathing and horrified murmurs. Mr. Lee, the owner, collapsed, his face ashen white, his entire body trembling. The evidence was overwhelming. The demon disguised as a kind-hearted chef had finally shown its true form. In the interrogation room of the Investigation Bureau, under the cold white light, Lee no longer maintained his initial composure or bewilderment. Faced with irrefutable evidence, the chunks of human flesh, the 2 sheets of skin, and the fateful fingernail, he completely broke down. After hours of evasiveness, then stubborn silence, finally, under the sharp questioning and psychological pressure from the investigator, Lee began to confess. His voice was monotonous, devoid of emotion, as he recounted the crimes he had committed, details that made even the most seasoned investigators shudder. He not only admitted to murdering and dismembering the victim Mr. Wang had accidentally discovered, but also confessed to another horrific crime, a crime he had concealed for months. 2 lives, 2 rapes and murders, committed with unimaginable brutality. Lee began with the first crime. "It was in April," he said, his voice hoarse, eyes fixed on the tabletop. Her name was Huang, about 20 years old, came from the countryside to the city looking for work. Huang was a young woman, attractive and gentle-natured. She came to Lee's Noodle house, applying for a waitress position. Seeing Huang was quick, hardworking, and honest, Lee hired her. Indeed, Huang was very diligent. She not only performed her serving and cleaning duties well, but also helped Lee with many odd jobs in the kitchen and organizing supplies. Huang's presence made the shop tidier, and Lee had more free time. He acted like a kind boss, concerned for his employee, but no one knew that behind that facade, depraved thoughts were gradually forming. Since Huang started helping with the work at the noodle shop, Lee's wife, a woman addicted to gambling, had even more free time. She frequently neglected her household duties, leaving everything to her husband and the young employee to spend her time playing mahjong with friends all night long. The wife's frequent absences unintentionally created the perfect conditions for Lee's dark intentions. He had more time alone with Huang, especially late in the evenings when the shop was quiet and only the 2 of them were left to clean up and close. In the cramped space of the noodle shop, under the dim yellow light, Lee's depraved desire for the young employee grew daily, waiting for an opportunity to erupt. That fateful night, like many others, Lee's noodle house gradually emptied. Huang was busy wiping tables, while Lee was counting the day's earnings. When the last customers had left, Lee looked outside. The street was sparsely populated. He glanced at Huang, who at that moment had her back to him, diligently wiping the last table. A dark thought flashed in his mind. He silently approached the entrance, then suddenly pulled down the rolling metal shutter. The dry clang of metal on metal echoed in the quiet space. Darkness abruptly enveloped part of the shop, with only a faint light coming from the kitchen area. Huang turned around, startled, not understanding what was happening. "Uncle Lee, why are you closing so early?" "What are you doing? Let me go." Huang's voice was panicked, laced with extreme fear, as she realized Lee's intentions. The shop owner, whom she had respected, now revealed his true nature as a predatory beast. Lee lunged at Huang, his rough hands grabbing and groping her. Huang struggled desperately, scratching, biting, using all her limited strength to resist the much stronger man's violent assault. "Help me! Is anyone there? Help!" Her cries for help were lost, blocked by the walls and the cold metal shutter, unable to escape. Lee became increasingly ferocious in the face of her determined resistance. He hadn't expected this seemingly frail girl to fight back so strongly. Lust turned into anger. He was determined to overpower her. The struggle took place in the cramped space of the noodle shop. The sound of falling furniture, gasping breaths, sobs, and Huang's desperate screams. In his animalistic rage, fearing her screams would alert the neighbors, and infuriated by her fierce resistance, Li used all his strength. His large, calloused hands clamped around Huang's slender throat. The young woman thrashed, her eyes wide with pain and lack of oxygen. Her face turned from flushed red to purple. Her resistance weakened, then ceased. Her arms went limp. Only a deathly silence remained. Li kept squeezing until he felt the lifelessness of the victim's body. He had killed Huang. After Huang had stopped breathing, Li still didn't stop. In a fit of depraved madness, he committed a final heinous act upon the lifeless body of the young woman. His brutality and animalistic nature had reached their peak. He had turned a human being, a life, into a tool to satisfy his basest, most barbaric desires. When the frenzy passed, Li slumped to the floor, panting, staring at Huang's motionless body. Belated panic began to seize him. He had to do something to conceal this horrific crime. His eyes darted around the noodle shop, stopping at the sharp knives used for slicing meat, and another ghastly plan began to form in the murderer's sick mind. To dispose of the crime, Li committed an act even more horrifying than murder. He dragged Huang's body into the kitchen, where all the necessary tools were available. With chilling calmness, he dismembered the girl. Her head and internal organs were put into black plastic bags, and then, choosing quiet moments in the dead of night, he secretly disposed of them in different locations, parks, garbage dumps, to complicate the investigation, if discovered. He meticulously cleaned the scene, erasing all traces of blood and struggle. Li's Noodle House opened the next day as usual, still bustling with customers, still filled with the aroma of broth and beef, no one knowing that the night before, a horrific tragedy had occurred there. Huang's remaining flesh, after Li had deboned it, was mixed with real beef. He minced part of it, sliced another part, and then heavily seasoned it according to the shop's secret recipe. Then, that gruesome human flesh was processed into the filling for his renowned beef noodles, sold to unsuspecting customers. Li's crimes didn't stop there. The success with Huang seemed to further stimulate his animalistic nature. In July, nearly 3 months later, when another young woman, also hoping to find honest work, applied for a job at Li's Noodle House, the old scenario repeated. Li used similar tactics, raping and then murdering this unfortunate girl, once again turning his victim into an ingredient for his deadly noodles. The fingernail Mr. Wang found belonged to this second victim. With Li's chillingly detailed confession, along with countless irrefutable pieces of evidence collected from the noodle shop and other secondary scenes, the indictment against him was quickly finalized. The subsequent trial attracted extraordinary public attention due to the barbaric and inhumane nature of the case. In the dock, Li no longer bore any resemblance to the kind, hard-working noodle shop owner. He sat with his head bowed, listening to the charges, but not a hint of remorse or repentance showed on his face. The outrage of the victims' families, those attending the trial, and the entire community reached its peak. Finally, for the crimes of serial murder, rape, and desecration of a corpse, the court delivered the most fitting sentence: death for Li. His beastly actions were paid for with his own life, though that could never compensate for the pain and loss he had caused. The human flesh beef noodle case of Li's Noodle House shocked the entire city, even spreading nationwide. The image of steaming bowls of beef noodles, once a familiar and appetizing dish, now became tainted with a horrific and haunting association in many people's minds. The most direct and severe consequences fell upon other beef noodle shops in the area around Lee's establishment. Though entirely innocent, the fear and revulsion stemming from the case made customers wary and avoidant. Numerous noodle shops suffered from plummeting sales, deserted by customers, with many owners struggling and even closing down because they couldn't sustain their businesses. It took a very long time afterward, as the horror gradually faded, for people to slowly dare to eat beef noodles again. But the ghost of the Lee's Noodle House case still lingered somewhere, a reminder of the darkest corners that can lurk within human nature.